About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling as a smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the heck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. "What the?" Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in her as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with a sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. I'll never forget that night I was left home alone. It was a stormy evening, and my parents had reluctantly gone to a family emergency, leaving me in our old creaky house. I was 16 at the time, old enough to be responsible, or so they thought. As the rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled, the house seemed to come alive with eerie sounds. I brushed off the unease, reassuring myself that I was just being paranoid. I decided to occupy myself by watching TV and trying to drown out the unsettling noises. Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of letting up. Just as I was beginning to feel a sense of comfort, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. My heart raced, and I muted the TV, straining to listen. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, like someone was tiptoeing. Terrified, I grabbed a heavy book from my bedside table and slowly opened the door, peering into the dimly lit corridor. I saw nothing but the faint glow of the hallway light. With a shaky breath, I ventured out, searching for the source of the eerie noise. The footsteps led me to the attic door. It was slightly ajar, and a pale, sickly light seeped out from the crack. I knew I had to investigate, my fear overriding my common sense. I climbed the narrow, rickety stairs to the attic. Inside, the room was filled with ancient belongings and forgotten memories. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the air was heavy with dust. But the strangest thing was the old, cracked mirror at the far end of the room. My reflection in the mirror seemed different, distorted, as if it was mocking me. I couldn't look away from the mirror, and as I gazed into it, the reflection grinned maliciously. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that the mirror held something malevolent. Suddenly, the glass shattered, and I was plunged into darkness. Panicking, I fumbled for my phone and used its dim light to find my way out. As I descended from the attic, I could hear whispers all around me, like voices from another realm. They were haunting, incomprehensible, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I locked myself in my room, hoping the nightmare would end. The storm raged on, and the whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent. It was as if the very house was trying to consume me. Hours later, my parents finally returned, and the moment they stepped inside, the haunting ceased. I told them about the mirror, the footsteps, and the sinister whispers, but they dismissed it all as my imagination. To this day, I'm not sure what happened that night, but I know that I'll never feel at ease in that old, creaky house again. The experience left me with the haunting fear of being alone in the dark, with the memory of the malevolent presence in the attic and the ominous whispers forever etched in my mind.